Thursday, November 17th, 2022. Welcome, everybody, to the Pack-A-Day video. I am not Andy Herman. That is not Andy Herman. Andy let some kids play with his computer, so here we are. Talking Packers and Titans. It's game day in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the second of two home games in 1 week. The Packers will be taking on the Tennessee Titans tonight. Is it a galvanizing moment from Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys, or is it just one big thud into another wall? Well, we're here to help you talk through some of that stuff. I'm your host today. I am Jacob Westendorf. You've seen me on here a few times. I run the Tuesday morning show with Ross Uglum and Jacob Morley. And I guess this would be my right over here, is Jimmy Christensen. Jimmy is on Sunday's episodes with Nick Schmitz and Gage Bridgeford, so you can always check them out normally right before the game gets going. But this week a little bit different. We'll have a few different things going on because it's Thursday Night Football. So, Jimmy, welcome to the show. How are we feeling about tonight's game? Or are you still on like the emotional high of winning on Sunday, or have you been like, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to carry that all the way until the game today. Which I'll actually be at, which I'm pumped about. I have to deal with Todd, which I'm not super pumped about, but I'm going to be at the game. I'm going to ride that emotional high until the end of the Titan game. I don't care what's going on. I'm just going to always think back to the Cowboy game during rough moments because we haven't had a win in a long time. So I'm going to hang on to it as long as I can.
No, it had been over a month since the Packers had won a football game. And really, honestly, I don't think it's a stretch at all to say that Sunday's game was the best game of the season and by far the most enjoyable one. Because even like the game where they beat Chicago earlier in the year, that was just kind of like, okay, it didn't even feel like the Packers had to like try. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the Bears, but like it didn't even feel like they had to do that much. Whereas Sunday against Dallas, they had to make plays. They had actual players. But, CeeDee Lamb, they got to cover him. They got to block Micah Parsons. They got to do stuff like that. Chicago's a different team now, but they weren't that team back then, and they just looked like a slop fest throughout the course of that particular game. So Green Bay coming off their best win of the season, their best game of the season, win or loss, quite frankly. Going into a game against the team, the Titans, the Packers and the Titans have some connections, obviously. Mike Vrabel and Matt LaFleur used to work together. Matt LaFleur was his offensive coordinator before he got hired here in Green Bay. Some scuttle, nothing overly confirmed, but some scuttle that maybe there's some tension between those two, so that could be interesting. The two teams last played in 2020. It was the COVID season. It was a winter wonderland. It was 2 days after Christmas. The Packers demolished the Tennessee Titans that night. It was and kind of the same-ish storylines from that game to this one, just from the standpoint of the matchup was, how is Green Bay going to slow down Derrick Henry? And, well, that particular game, the answer was score 40 points, which they did. They won 40-14 that particular night, and one of the Titans' touchdowns came after the game was very well in hand. This year, a bit of a different story. The Packers' offense has not scored 40. In fact, Sunday, they scored 31, and that was the first time they'd scored 30 points this season. So the question then becomes, are they capable of doing that? And the Titans' defense is much better this year than it was in 2020. The Titans' pass defense, I believe, was last in the NFL when the Packers went in to play them that particular night. So quarterback versus worst pass defense, running back versus bad run defense. The advantage in the NFL almost always goes to the quarterback in that scenario. But, Jimmy, this time around, maybe not the greatest of feelings that the Packers offense. Do you think that they can find some traction against this Tennessee defense? And because, you don't anticipate them being able to slow down Henry just playing defense, right?
I don't. Henry just seems to be, which is weird to say, but just another level this time of the year. Like he's a monster. And we always say like, it's going to be cold in Lambeau, but yeah. And our defense that's going to be cold is going to have to try to tackle a transformer running at them full speed. So I don't see us slowing him down too much. I know last time he finished with 93 yards, and you said, and that was mainly because we put up a bunch of points and it was hard for them to rely on that run game. Hopefully we can. I don't know. We probably won't have Devondre, or we don't have Devondre. And Kenny Clark, as much as I love him, has not been the same player the last 3 weeks. Herman put on Twitter today how he's graded negative the last 3 weeks and just not really there. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to have to be our best way to stop them scoring points again. And Our offense, like you said, only got to 30 this past week. So hopefully it happens. But that's going to be the thing, is our offense is going to have to keep clicking, keep gelling. And the thing that I'm most excited about is last week was the first time all season, and really, I don't know, in the LaFleur era, where we got punched in the mouth and we were down 14 points in the fourth quarter, and we were able to face that adversity and come out with the win. The one thing we know about this Titans team is they are physical. They want it to be a physical game. They will out physical you. They'll beat you down. And so there's going to be times we get punched in the mouth, and it's stacking that success of, we faced adversity last week. Let's deal with this physicality this week. And hopefully have another AJ Dillon breakout game, match your physicality with Thunder Quads himself.
Yeah, and they did that the last time those two teams played. AJ Dillon had to play. Jamal Williams was out with a minor injury the last time these two teams played in 2020, and that was kind of AJ Dillon's coming out party of sorts. He scored 2 touchdowns that night. He ran for over 100 yards. He outrushed Derrick Henry, which is interesting because those two are always intertwined, basically because they're a similar size. Dillon's actually bigger than Henry, faster, all that. You guys have heard that story of AJ Dillon by this point. The part that I am looking forward to is seeing the injury report and how everything shakes out. So Devondre Campbell, like you mentioned, is a DNP the last Monday and Tuesday. Don't have the Wednesday report at the time of this recording, but it's hard to imagine him going from 2 DNPs on Monday and Tuesday to practicing and then playing on Thursday night. But per league source, and my league source is Big B, and shout out to Big B, the future of Packers media that had the time of his life this weekend, said he was told by Randall Cobb that Randall Cobb said he was going to play this week. Now, maybe Cobb thought that, and it's not eventually going to work out, but before Cobb got injured, he was their best offensive playmaker outside of Aaron Jones. And adding him back to the lineup gives Rodgers another guy that he can kind of lean on a little bit in some moments where maybe he needs a veteran or feels he needs a veteran to make a play like that. Lazard is back, obviously, and playing. And Christian Watson coming off the best game of his NFL career. And I just kind of want to see how can they stack those things together. This isn't the Sports Illustrated Green Bay Packers from 2011, obviously, if those guys play, but the explosiveness level of a healthy Lazard, who's not overly explosive, but is your steady vet. If Cobb is back and healthy, because he looked more explosive this year than he has in years past, Watson's able to play, and Samori Toure is getting reps that were previously going to Amari Rodgers, who we don't need to rehash that, but Amari Rodgers isn't on the team anymore for a couple of reasons, and one of them was he's not a very explosive player on the offensive side of the ball. That's why he can't play. And then obviously Sammy Watkins doing some of the veteran stuff too. But that group right there specifically of Watson, Toure, Cobb being able to add a different dimension, some speed to an offense and Watson specifically, that just desperately needs the ability to do some things like that. Now they are playing a very good defense and a very physical defense. And like you mentioned, Matt LaFleur said this is one of the best run defenses in all of football. The biggest injury I think for tonight, since you guys are watching this on Thursday, is Jeffrey Simmons, their defensive tackle. He was a DNP on Monday. He limited participation on Tuesday. That's the biggest one, I think. Caleb Farley has been placed on injured reserve, so he's not going to play. But otherwise, most of their guys are either full or limited. And some of their DNP, Lonnie Johnson, Amani Hooker was a limited participant, just kind of going down the line. Bud Dupree did not participate, so that could be a big one for the Titans in their front seven. But just thinking, if they have their guys, it's hard to envision a scenario where Green Bay is able to run for over 200 yards the way they did on Sunday against Dallas. So my question to you then, that's not a great matchup for the Packers. Their passing game has not been a large asset to their team this season. What is your confidence level that they are going to be able to line up and throw the ball to score points? Because that feels like the path to victory in this particular game, considering the matchup they're facing on defense.
I wish I could say my confidence is high, but part of the reason we had success against the Cowboys was, one, Christian Watson is a freak athlete, and two, we played off the run game. Unless we have the best offensive line play we've had all season, that's going to be hard to do against this defense. So I'm not extremely confident that our pass game is going to be able to click right away. With Rodgers, it's always possible, even with his down play this season. We saw last week, he's still able to make those throws. He's still the back-to-back MVP. He has that in him. but my confidence definitely is not as high as it was if this would have been last year or even in the beginning of the season. I've just been torn apart too much by that losing streak. But I think we saw with the Cowboys too, though, that we ran against stacked box with Jones and Dillon and Aaron Jones. It comes to a point, just like with Derrick Henry, when you're good enough, that run game's going to work. So maybe Aaron Jones is to that level now. The physicality, we saw AJ Dillon look like himself last week. The beginning of the year, he seemed like a little bit different of a player. He was going down after like first contact, which we have not seen from him up until this season. And last week, like he had those 10-yard rushes. He wouldn't go down on the first hit. So I still think even with this stout defense, like everything's going to have to come off the run game. And then hopefully our best two are better than their 8 in the box.
Yeah, and that'll be the interesting part to see is last week, the offense looked more like, we always talk about this LaFleur offense versus Rodgers offense, and last week looked a lot more like LaFleur's offense with Rodgers being able to be under center more. The thumb, they've said has kind of healed a little bit more. That helps. And, frankly, I think some of it too was the fact that that Dallas pass rush is vicious. And if you just get back into a straight drop back game against them, Rodgers is going to get decked. Like that's just the way that's going to work. So it did work last week, obviously.
I was going to say that was also the first week we had our ideal 5 starting linemen playing for the whole game.
Yeah. And hopefully, I mean, granted, some of the participation statuses in practice are probably due to it being a short week. Guys like Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins and all them haven't participated in practice yet this week, but typically, it's a shorter week. So maybe they're just saying those guys don't really need to practice in order to play. But you're right. That is a big storyline of this season so far, is the Packers having to play musical chairs with their offensive line group. And they didn't have to do that on Sunday. And it's the first time that I think all season that group of 5 started back-to-back games. And it's the first time, like you said, that they started and finished the entire game as well. So I'm going to be interested to see if they're able to do that again. Because this offensive line, you talk about those 5 guys, it's a pretty solid group when you do that. You start mixing and matching with backups and moving players around and doing some of the Cupid shuffle stuff they've been doing throughout the course of the season. Then it gets a little more difficult. And it has been, especially when, this 5 that they're playing is their best 5 to run the ball as well. So when you start talking about Jenkins and Runyon as guards, those guys are better options in the run game. Maybe maybe Royce Newman is a little bit better as a run blocker, but what you give up in the pass game then is problematic on that side of things. Let's talk about what this game means. The Packers are 4-6. Rodgers says we're not dead yet. Packers fans, media members are starting to put that right in line with, run the table and RELAX and all that sort of stuff. That's what I think this game means. Was it just, to quote Ron Wolf, was Sunday's win against Dallas just a fart in the wind? Was it just a thing that, stops and then that's the end of everything? Or is it something that galvanizes the team? Because if you get to 5-6 and have 2 wins in a row with 10 days off before you go play the Eagles and what'll then be the biggest game of the season to date on the road against a team with one of the best records in football, then you talk about winning that game and getting to 6-6, then you could start to see a path where this team could make a run at it and get to the playoffs. The hard part that I'm envisioning is that, the Titans are a good football team. The Packers have to win that game at home. They have the Eagles, who are a really good team, and they have the Dolphins on Christmas Day. Those are the 3 best teams left on their schedule. And I think they have to win 2 out of 3 of those games to have a shot. And then even then, they have to not lose another game down the stretch. So what you're kind of hoping, I guess, from that standpoint is that can either beat Minnesota at home, or maybe Minnesota doesn't have much to play for because they've got everything they want already locked up. So they're not playing some of their guys, or like you said, maybe Green Bay plays a little bit better there. But the question I'm getting at is, do you think Sunday's game was galvanizing moment type thing, or was it just at the end of the year, we're going to look back and be like, man, that Dallas game was awesome, but that really was kind of like just the team's Super Bowl, and then it all went back off the rails after that?
It gets answered today. Like this question, we're going to find out. We're going to find out later on, like if it was just, as you said, a fart in the wind. I don't know. We've said all year, this team has the talent. Like, I think it could be the momentum starter. We saw with Tampa Bay, they were on a losing streak. They beat the Rams, and they go back. They're in Germany. They beat the Seahawks, who are playing really well this year. So Rodgers has said it all this during that losing streak. It takes one win to get back on track. So as of now, and I think it's the 100% biased fan in me, I'm going to say it's back on track until I'm proved otherwise. But it's to go back to another Rodgers saying, like, it's damn near needs to be a run the table again, though, because the NFC is so weird right now. Like, you have this Eagles and the Vikings kind of separating themselves at the top of the NFC right now, but that middle pack, like, teams are doing some weird things to where it's going to be a really messy race. Even like we lose one, or if we lose two, I think we're out of it. Like, we have that one grace loss, but even then it's going to be a weird race because the Commanders beat us, because the Jets beat us, the Giants beat us. Like, that, the Giants matter, Jets don't, but it's just a weird, it's going to be a weird thing.
Yeah, and that's why that Washington game from Monday where they beat the Eagles hurts as much if you want the Packers to have a shot at the playoffs. Because if Washington loses that game, they're 4-6 and have the same record as Green Bay. They own the tiebreaker because of that head-to-head victory. But now, in essence, it's a 2-game lead that Washington has and route to that spot. And frankly, some of those teams that, you know, we're asking Dallas or San Francisco or the Giants really to collapse, maybe Seattle, if a team like that can do it. But you're asking one of those teams to kind of fall out of it, and that's really the path to, again, the 7 seed. So you get a 7 seed and a date with either the Eagles or the Vikings on the road in the first round of the playoffs, which, hey, that beats the alternative of, you know, not having a chance to win a championship, in my opinion. That being said, the team's just in such a rough spot. They kind of made their own bed with that 5-game losing streak against teams that they are more talented than, supposed to be better than, whatever way you want to look at that. They had leads in those games. They should have beaten the Giants. They didn't. They should have beaten Washington. And I'm not even saying that they, from the standpoint of like they played poorly or something went against them or anything like that. They had leads in those games and they blew them. And that's those 2 games. That doesn't include the Jets they were tied with at halftime. And that obviously didn't go well in the second half. And then, you know, Buffalo was a game that I don't think anybody expected them to win. And then losing the Lions, you know, that might be the game at the end of the year. If they miss the playoffs by a game, that's going to be the game that you circle as like, are you kidding me?
See,
like
for me, I'd be more mad about the ones where we had leads in, because at least we were in control. Like that Lions game, there was not a point where we were like, oh, this game is ours. With the Giants and Commanders, like we had leads. So like those would be the ones I'm more frustrated about, because like we were in position to win that game. Lions was just I blocked it out of my memory.
Yeah, it's all one giant cornucopia of frustration, which is where we're at right now. But the Packers can right the ship tonight. They play at 7:20 on Amazon Prime, unless you are in the Green Bay or Milwaukee area. So, Jimmy, you should get the game locally. Well, you'll be in the stadium, so you definitely get the game locally.
Crop top and all, baby.
There we go. And it's going to be 29 degrees as the high. So crop top and 23 degrees, that is dedication, if nothing else. So you guys that are in the stands appreciate that. But 7:20, if you don't have that, if you're a peasant like me and live outside the state of Wisconsin, then you're going to have to get Prime Video, listen to Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit call the game. The question, Jimmy, is, like you said, you kind of already answered it, but who wins the game and why?
Before I answer that, also, if you have Amazon Prime, make sure you watch the Marshawn Lynch thing, because he's interviewing Aaron Rodgers, and I'm very excited for that. Which made me laugh, though, because every other city he went to, he did something cool. Like in Houston, he went to NASA. When he was in New Orleans, he did like an alligator thing and like was feeding alligators and touching them. Couldn't think of anything to do in Green Bay. So he's just like, you know what? I'm going to talk to a former teammate and hang out with Aaron Rodgers, which made me laugh. I guess there was nothing for him to do. For tonight's game, whenever I make these predictions, I always tell myself, like, take the fan side out of it. I never do. I'm going to go Packers. It's going to be a close one. Physical Titans team. Say 24-21 Packers.
Jimmy likes the Packers 24-21. I think Green Bay is going to – I think they found something on Sunday with Watson's speed. And it's just – it is a fact. Dusty Evely tweeted everything out today about how much better the offense is when he's on the field. He's a difference maker just by being out there. If they can get Randall Cobb back, you know, the injury report is always kind of wonky, and we don't, like I said, we don't have designations at this point. So basically what I'm doing is assuming the guys that could play last week can play this week when I talk about it, which in essence is everybody, because there wasn't anybody who left the game and didn't come back. You know, Devontae Wyatt got injured. He came back. Jaron Reed got injured. He came back. I don't remember anybody else leaving the game on Sunday. But the loss of Rashawn Gary is massive for this front seven. The Packers cannot put pressure on the quarterback consistently without him unless Kenny Clark starts playing better. Maybe Wyatt gets some more snaps, and Preston Smith, frankly, is going to have – he's got some tough sledding ahead of him, but he's going to have to start beating some blocks and getting some quarterback pressures as well. Can Green Bay force enough turnovers on something like that? I don't know. Ryan Tannehill is able to move a little bit, which always worries me. Maybe I still just have – Kaepernick and Russell Wilson PTSD when I say stuff like that. And the reality is Green Bay can't take Derrick Henry out of this game with their offense. I don't think. They're not as good as they are or were in 2020. The Cowboys averaged 5 yards a crack and weren't willing to lean on their running game.
The draw play made me so mad.
Yes.
Derrick Henry could have 300 yards if they just do like 10 draw plays with him.
Yeah. And that's the part that's frustrating. Maybe they get Chris Barnes back. That might give them a little bit of a boost against the run. He's got a little more size to him than Isaiah McDuffie does. Maybe Quay Walker continues to get better, stuff like that. But I don't think Green Bay can take Henry out of the game, and the Titans are willing to lean into that run game. And because of that, I don't know if the Packers can score enough points to slow Henry down enough and force turnovers and get those things of that nature. So I like the Titans. I like them 21-17, and I lean more towards fart in the wind than galvanizing moment when it comes to what Sunday's game was. But hey, hopefully I'm wrong. I would love to be and get this team as a chance to get to the playoffs. If they win Friday morning, we could start having some discussions about whether or not this team can make the playoffs. And there's going to be a lot of juice from Packers fans because Packer fans travel well. They travel well to Philadelphia, and there's a pretty decent-sized Packers contingent in Philadelphia. So that could be a really big game. And oddly enough, the game that started the run the table run was against Philadelphia. So maybe that's something where that would be like, hey, we're all the way back and we got a shot at this thing now if they can win these next two games. But if they don't, then you can start watching draft highlights or reruns of whatever it is you watch on Netflix these days. I don't even know. What's the new popular thing, Jimmy? You're way more in tune in that than I am.
Right now I'm just rewatching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. My wife and I did watch Love is Blind. Great drama.
My wife watches that.
You should watch it with her. It's entertaining, dude.
Okay.
It's wild.
I'll give that a shot. Dahmer, I know that was a thing for a while, but like that's kind of died. I mean, once is the only time I need to see that series. So
yeah, that's not one you want to.
No, that's not a rewatch. So if they lose, you can start doing stuff like that. Check us out every day at Pack a Day Podcast. You can follow and subscribe on YouTube. Do all the stuff here. From Jacob Westendorf, that's Jimmy Christensen. We'll see you guys. Enjoy the game tonight. Go Pack, go.